Good morning. This is Dawn Monahan. This is a second part of a two-part series about self-care. The first part has been posted and it covered workplace safety, which is important with self-care. This second part speaks directly to stress management and coping in the field of nursing and nursing school. So we will be looking at, through this discussion, what are the personal stressors and environments that can really alter how we care for our clients. And we can talk about those measures that we can implement to alleviate stress and help us, or hopefully enhance our coping mechanisms. And then to just basically have a better understanding of the signs and symptoms of stress, burnout, fatigue, those kinds of things. So I have this, and we've talked about this in class before, this little snippet that you can put on a wall somewhere, right? Because this is not an easy journey. The entry into nursing is quite difficult, and as I will often talk about with seniors, is I'd like to tell them that this was the last stressful year of their lives, but in some ways, it's almost, I call it adulting camp, because the profession of nursing can certainly overwhelm us at times. It shouldn't, but it can. So you can see here that the BSN has been chosen as the toughest degree. It was actually put in the Guinness Book of World Records back in 2011, and that in the 4-year setting, on average, you'll have about 64 exams and another 130 quizzes or assignments, another 174 with your clinical work. So it's a lot of work. So, managing stress definitely begins here in nursing school, and how you will professionally move towards those really healthy coping skills. If you click on this hyperlink, you will see that there's a nice little website that actually gives you some tips on how to manage nursing school stress. I believe there's 7 tips there. And they're pretty good tips. You're going to find things like, find a study group, learn to still be active and get some physical exercise and eat well, those kinds of things. So what are the impacts of stress? Well, here's a nice list of them. Sometimes people experience changes in their sleep, their changes in energy level. If we're really stressed, we have a difficult time focusing or staying on task. Emotional, like mood swings. I'm reluctant to use the word mood swings because in mental health, a mood swing is more about energy. I'm talking about like emotional lability, like, oh my God, I'm laughing, then I'm crying. Perhaps we're not eating well anymore, loss of weight or gaining weight. Now we're resorting to unhealthy habits like smoking or drinking. And in the long run, once an individual is overwhelmed with stress, it will impact their performance as far as tardiness and attendance. So this can happen certainly in the healthcare setting, but we can even see that in nursing school, right? The students who are stressed out, suddenly it's like, uh-oh, where'd they go? So what are the things that we can do, the interventions for stress? Well, awareness and assessment, meaning self-assessment. Are we aware of what's happening within us? And then coming up with a commitment to stay well. And that commitment can't waver. And it should be something that we develop and we sort of make a commitment to ourselves long before stress consumes us. So, hey, I know that a walk 20 minutes a day is what keeps me okay. Well, then that has to happen on good days and bad days. Knowing those signs and symptoms of stress certainly and some of the different types of stress that we can see, like compassion fatigue, when we've been working nonstop to care for somebody. Nurses can certainly have compassion fatigue, as can caregivers. So you don't have to be a nurse to have compassion fatigue. When we're caring for others and we don't care for ourselves, it can be overwhelming. Professors have compassion fatigue. Vicarious trauma, right? So accidental trauma can certainly be a problem. Moral stress and disruptive uncivil behaviors also can be indicators or can create stress. One of the key ways that we can navigate stress as a novice nurse is to seek out mentorship or guidance from nurses who have survived and have developed healthy, positive coping skills. So the World Health Organization in 1983 basically said that, hey, listen, we have to look at the concept of self-care for our healthcare providers, and we have to look at the concept of self-care for our clients and start to talk about health as wellness and what does that look like and how do we take care of ourselves. So basically then began the mind-body movement, and many of you may be very familiar with this movement, and that is the belief that really to live a life of wellness and health, we have to be healthy of body, of spirit, and of mind, right? And we have to do that, take care of ourselves in that way so that we can take care of our clients. So when we talk about a healthy body, we're free from disabling disease, we're able to exercise and move about our world. What are the things we can do to take care of our body in addition to daily movement, exercise, which is super good for us, is things like, breath work, yoga, massages, anything that really is connected to keeping the body well. We talk about the mind. What are the things that we do to help our mind, like meditation and focus? Maybe it would be distraction through the use of music or guided imagery. And then spiritually, regardless, when we talk about spirituality, we're not talking about religion. We're talking about the way in which our unconscious joins our spirit. So, you don't have to believe in any deity to have spirituality, meaning, how am I connected to this place? For some of us, it might be standing near that tree over there makes me feel alive. So it may not be about physically moving and climbing a tree. It may not be even about thinking about a tree and how wonderful it is, but just simply being near the tree. So that might come from prayer, it might come from another form of meditation, or just mindful presence in the things that make us feel connected to this place and space. So, Dorothea Orem, we talked about her back in the first 4 weeks of school. She has a well-known nursing theory, the self-care deficit theory. And Dorothea would say, our role as nurses is to help patients get back to their ADLs and navigate or improve their self-care deficit. Well, if it's good for the patient, then it's good for us as well, for sure. Because we know that the effects of long-term stress or poor self-care can really give us lots of unhealthy behaviors. In addition to poor self-care, where we're just not simply taking care of ourselves, not sleeping, not eating, you can see that we can have from this list flashbacks, nightmares, physical impairments, denial. We can really be agitated. All of those things, and those tend to be associated with compassion fatigue, can ultimately lead to burnout. So there's a link here that you can connect to that talks about burnout. And I'm sure you've heard that term. And nursing has a very high rate of burnout. Currently, we know that nurses who enter the field, new nurses who come into practice, within 2 years, we lose between 20 and 25% of nurses who come in. So, if you were to look around the classroom, That's like 1 to 4, maybe 1 to 5 out of everyone in the classroom right now. We're a group of 35. So if everybody were to graduate, that would be, you're looking at about 7 or 8 of you who would go into practice and within 2 years be like, yeah, I can't do this, I'm burnt out, whether it be an easy departure or not so easy departure. And we just don't want to lose new nurses. So that constant exposure to situations that causes stress, takes away our energies, that's what really leads to burnout. And there's so many things that do that to us as nurses. So how do we prevent this burnout? Well, be kind to yourself. We're on week 12 right now of this course, and I can even tell you that the decision to put this lecture online was really, actually, I thought about it and I said, it might be good for everybody, because every once in a while we have to just say, "Woo, we've been going, 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 and have we taken care of ourselves?" On the heels of a long weekend, and the material being light, and you have an exam, I thought, you know what, we can put this material online and students can access it at their convenience. It gives you a little bit of time this early Tuesday morning to sort of refresh your ideas so that you can make it through these last 4 weeks without feeling so burned out. Other ways that we can prevent burnout: personal boundaries. It's huge. The ability to say, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now, or I'm not able to complete that. And we do it in a professional way. Talking with others, right? So that we can sort of feel like, okay, I feel supported. I can talk to somebody. And also become part of the change, because nursing, again, high rate of burnout. And there's sort of this unsolicited assumption that you as a nurse can do it all. And maybe what we need to do is really focus on, we can't do it all. We do the best we can. We're safe. We take good care of our patients, but we also take good care of ourselves. This slide here, the graph does a nice comparative, the difference between compassion fatigue and burnout. And you can see here that the burnout is that constant repetitive exposure to stress, whereas compassion fatigue is really just the end result of just having to constantly care for others. So we can have compassion fatigue and not be truly burnt out, but oftentimes it leads to burnout. And compassion fatigue can feel sudden, like all of a sudden it's just like, I can't do this anymore. Whereas burnout, it's a slow, slippery slope to this place where we just don't want to do anything. We have that decreased amount of empathy in burnout. We withdraw and we're just like, we're done. And in compassion fatigue, we may have a bad day, or we may feel like this really stinks, but if we step back, we can then kind of return to that caring, empathetic role. So I'm going to break here and go to the second part of this lecture series for self-care, stress management, and coping. See you in part 2.